Truth is making a comeback. America's Top Stories with Lisa K. Donner.
As everybody in the world knows by now, President Trump was invited by the Queen of England for a state visit on the 75th anniversary of D-Day. It wasn't all bouquets and roses, though, as London Mayor Sadiq Kahn provided a welcome atmosphere to protesters. There were supposed to be 100,000 of them, but our Liberty Nation team on the ground in London say it was nowhere near that number. LN's Mark Angelides and Laura Volkovic join me now. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Laura.
So, Laura, let's start with you. You were there. The crowd was supposed to be around 100,000, but what was it really?
Well, Lisa, I would probably estimate there were around 10,000. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Certainly, the event was much smaller than when President Trump visited last year.
So, Mark, it looked like an odd group of people. What was your take as one who was there? In other words, can you run down the list of loonies?
Sure, Lisa. So there was initially planned to be a group of different groups of what they called themselves blocs, B-L-O-C-S. So there was the Palestinian bloc, the climate bloc, the chlorinated chicken bloc, the Muslimas bloc, the families bloc, the socialist bloc, the communist bloc. All of these different groups were supposed to be in attendance. And what happened was most of the groups didn't attend, or there was only a few people from each one. So it kind of melded into one group thing, one whole group, which was, counts up to about the 10,000 that Laura's just mentioned. In terms of whether they were all loonies or not, I wouldn't say that particularly is a fair thing. There were some genuine protesters there with some genuine reasons. For example, climate change, worries about international trade. But of course, there were also the out and out just haters who seem to revel in the carnival of idiocy.
Point taken, but what we call people who dress up in chicken suits and go out in public in America, we call them kind of crazy.
I'm dressed as a chlorinated chicken.
Tell me a little bit about your intersection with those people, Laura. What were they like? Were they vehemently opposed to Trump, or were they just out for fun?
Hi, this is Laura Volkovic reporting for LibertyNation.com. On the
kind of wacky outfits and kind of performance art aspects were really more to get attention, particularly the chlorinated chicken outfits that we saw. I think they just saw that as a way to get attention for their cause, rather than just doing it for the sake of being crazy.
Send the racist on his way.
I think some people were there just kind of hoping for a fight and to kind of express anger. But a lot of people seem to be there basically for a party.
Mark, we've got to dig into this a little bit. What exactly is the issue with the chlorinated chicken so that Americans are clear on the British problem here?
Okay, to give you the very brief version, although this will take an article to go into in depth, the chlorinated chicken people are worried that because of Brexit, Britain will no longer be part of the EU, which means that Britain will be susceptible to high-pressure trade deals from, for instance, Donald Trump, who seems to have a very keen business sense, as I'm sure you'd agree. And so with part of that, they think that Britain will end up accepting what's called a chlorine-washed chicken, which is sold in not all supermarkets, but many of the supermarkets in the US. Now, obviously in the UK, 10% of the fruit and vegetables that we get from the EU is also washed in chlorine. So it's not so much the matter of the chlorine that's bothering them, but the fact that a chicken farmer would use chlorine shows that there could be, not will, but could be some poor hygiene practices earlier down the line. So really, when they're protesting this, what they're saying is that we want better quality food as opposed to washed in chlorine, possibly with poor health practices further before the line.
Well, thank you for illuminating that unusual controversy that Donald Trump is apparently responsible for. But Laura, what was the most surprising event of the day, in your opinion, in Trafalgar Square?
In my opinion, well, one thing that I really noticed was that a lot of people hadn't really made their own signs or their own ways of demonstrating. Some had been very creative and individual and done their own thing. But a lot of the signs were supplied by activist groups or unions or socialist political parties. So it kind of made me wonder exactly how grassroots is the protest movement versus how much is controlled behind the scenes.
Well, that is an excellent point. Mark, did you happen to run across any pro-Trump people?
Certainly did, Lisa.
This is Mark Angeles with LibertyNation.com. We've met up with Maria again from last year at the last anti-Trump protest.
Yeah, there was a few, not many. They were certainly outnumbered.
Why are you down here today?
I came to protest against the protesters.
Rosie, could you tell us what you're doing out here today?
I'm here because this giant group of people is actually embarrassing our nation right now.
Let's be fair, they're a brave bunch of souls. Right in the middle of the crowd with Israel flags, chanting pro-Trump slogans, POTUS 45. You can see the videos on LibertyNation.com.
Laura, did you run across any people in Make America or Make Great Britain Great Again hats?
There were a couple. The Make Britain Great Again group seems to have kind of dissipated, but there were a few individuals who were still wearing the hats.
I'm here with Rosie, who's very bravely wearing a Make America Great Again cap. Thanks for speaking to us. Oh, Make Britain Great Again cap, I'm sorry. Two peas in the same pot. Yeah.
Now, we did see pictures of helicopters flying about. Mark, can you talk about that a little bit? What's that all about?
Sure. So whenever there's a protest or a march, everything seems to be very controlled in terms of what internet is allowed out. And this is something we've experienced just about every time we've done one of these events, is the helicopters. They're responsible for jamming the internet signals. Now, if you have, for example, the Globocast, the CNN vans, which have their own satellites on, that's a strong enough signal to get out. But for people who are just on the ground with, let's say, not quite their own vans, their own transmitting satellite vans, it's almost impossible to get a signal in or out of the protest or march area. And there's just helicopters circling constantly throughout the day.
Wow, big brother. Laura, in your estimation, was the Trump protest a boom or a bust?
Who are you? 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 Who are you?
Well, perhaps to some degree a bust. They got a lot of attention, and I guess that was probably the goal. But in terms of numbers, on both sides, it seems like people didn't really want to get out there as much as they have previously. There wasn't really, I don't think there was as much kind of outrage on either side. It seemed kind of subdued to me. So I think people are kind of starting to move on with their lives, to be honest.
Mark, do you think that part of it is that Trump was an official guest of the Queen of England?
Well, this actually ties in with something Laura mentioned earlier about the signs and the placards being provided by specific organizations, many of which socialist organizations, the Socialist Workers' Party, for example, who, and this may sound strange to American listeners, but many of these people are socialist Republicans in that they're socialist and they don't want the Queen. They'd rather have it as a republic. So yes, part of it, I would say, is because it was a meeting with the Queen. So this is somebody they don't like because of his, let's say, more free market policies. meeting up with somebody they don't like because they're certainly not royalists. So socialist Republicans, there's a new phrase for our American friends.
Well, thanks guys for a job well done. Go out and have some fun in London.
Thanks, Lisa. Take care.
All right, that's Laura Volkovic and Mark Angelides reporting from London, England.
Truth is making a comeback. Visit us at libertynation.com.